Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Welcome to our YouTube studio here for Shared Perspectives. This is a forum where we invite agency leaders to talk about the business, what they are seeing in the media landscape, and really share those perspectives with others. So I'm excited to have you here to go deeper into the health and pharma industry. For our audience, I'll give you a quick intro. This is Scott Ensign, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of Butler Till. Scott, to kick us off for today, can you tell me a little bit more about your role and Butler Till as an agency?
Yeah, I would love to. So as my title suggests, I lead strategy at Butler Till. In the context of our agency, that really means I'm responsible for our offering. So what we're doing for clients, from media strategy to activation to research, engineering, etc., and all of the components of that offering, which is great. It's a lot of fun, making sure that what we're offering to clients is progressive, is going to be relevant not just today, but in the future. So a lot of living in the future, which is really exciting work. Butler Till is a few things that are unique about us. We're an independent media agency, which in itself is not unique, but we're 100% employee owned. That means every employee earns shares over a period of time. We don't have any outside investment. It's an employee stock ownership plan, which makes it a cool place to work. We also were founded by two dynamic women in the late 90s. We're a women-owned, women-led certified business, and we're a certified B Corporation. So really committed to balancing people and profits in the work that we do for our clients, for our people, and for our communities. So that all of those things together makes it a really unique place to work. We focus on a couple of areas. One is decentralized local media, so for large brands with a decentralized footprint, like a franchise or organization, an agent network or a dealer network. And then what we're really here to talk about today mostly is the work that we do in health and pharma. And so that's helping clients with their paid media and marketing needs in that category specifically.
Wow, I knew a little bit about that at Butler Till, but really just an amazing agency and brand and vision that you all share. So excited to hear more. What are the most prevalent challenges you're seeing within the space for this type of an industry?
Yeah, I mean, beyond the challenges that really every category is facing now, healthcare and pharma specifically has some unique ones, as you can imagine. The first one of those, which I think is pretty evident and apparent, is privacy. So we're dealing with a very, very privacy-sensitive category for excellent reasons. Like, everyone wants this to be a privacy-sensitive category, dealing with personal health information in a lot of cases, and brands are therefore, clients and brands are therefore very conservative and sensitive with how they use data. So that's definitely one thing, and there's just a heightened sense of security and data custody and things like that. And then related to that is it's a highly regulated industry, of course. Again, also for very good reasons. If there's any industry you want to be regulated, it's healthcare and pharmaceuticals. So that presents unique challenges for brands too. There's things that you can't say, things that you can't do. Some of the addressability and what we're, I know, going to talk a little bit about measurability is different, let's say, and constrained. And of course, from those constraints is where we have the opportunity to work with partners like Google to think and to innovate on behalf of our clients, which is a lot of fun. One of the other things then, as a result of the privacy and regulation, is there tends to be a little bit of a dearth of first-party data. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Like I said, part of it is the privacy-sensitive nature of the category. But the other part is that, so thinking about pharma specifically, which is where we do a lot of our work, there are degrees of separation between brand, manufacturer, client, and the patient or the end user in ways that a lot of categories don't have. So that comes in the form of, obviously, doctors, healthcare professionals, pharmacies, and the distribution channels therefore just create degrees of separation. So there doesn't tend to be, for privacy and for those reasons, a lot of first-party data. All of those things together result in some challenges around measurement. So what we're able to do around measurement just looks different than if we were doing e-commerce, if we were doing other forms of lead generation. Of course, it would be a little bit more straightforward. But again, we like those challenges because they give some really interesting things for us to sink our teeth in on behalf of our clients and to create new solutions.
Yeah, you talked about a few things, and very similar to what we see with some of our customers at Google as well. But obviously, what you were just touching on, the privacy, the regulation, media is definitely a theme that I heard you talk a little bit about too, and then measurement, which I think we'll dive into all three of those today, which I'm excited to hear your perspective on. But first, why don't we start with the privacy piece? It sounds like you have to be really creative.
For sure.
In terms of how you go to market, also really sensitive for your customers. So curious, tell me more about what tools are you using to really bring that to life for your customers?
Yeah, so I can give you one example that's top of mind because it's something that we've been working on recently and we've gotten some external attention and accolades for recently. So again, going back to the pharma space specifically, pharma brands, because of the lack of addressability, or at least relative to other categories, a lack of addressability, and you don't really want to target or certainly have audiences feel like you're targeting them based on a condition that they have or something that they've been searching for. That's why there's, again, all kinds of regulation in this space. So because of that, high quality contextual inventory has always been very important in the pharma space. And so if you think about sites like WebMD or Healthline or Everyday Health, those are sites that these brands really gravitate towards. That's a place where you can connect with an audience who's consuming content about a given condition and do it in a way that's very natural and native to those sites and environments and seems to the end user to be appropriate. So that's the good side of it. And the challenge is that creates a little bit of an environment of scarcity. There's only so many of those sites. Working with them one-to-one, it tends to be an escalating rate environment. So it's both scarce and I think, therefore, law of economics would tell you gets expensive. Our clients have really, for a long time, been looking for ways to get beyond that, but to do it in a way that feels like the same environment and level of quality. So all of that to say, curation is something that we've really dug into on the programmatic side. And so we've worked with partners to create some smart private marketplaces that take a bunch of that kind of inventory together, and we do that in a condition-specific way. We call it our conditions marketplace. If this is content about psoriasis, we have this endemic, contextual, high-quality content that's all together in one marketplace that we can then buy into programmatically. So that's combining the benefits of high-quality inventory with all of the benefits of programmatic, so addressability, optimizability, accountability, measurement, all of those things, and the ability to infuse data and really kind of bring the best of those worlds together in a very privacy-forward way for our clients. And it's top of mind in part as we did just at the end of last year win an Ad Exchanger award for that for best use of data by an agency, which was really cool.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Super
It was
exciting.
a lot of fun. I actually got to go up on stage and give an acceptance speech, which was very
wow.
unexpected, but a lot of fun. And like I said, necessity is the mother of invention, and having the ability to work within these constraints and work with clients who still want to do things and who are still have resources and goals that they need to meet and want to work alongside an agency to innovate on those things and collaborate. And we talk about radical collaboration with our clients at Butler Till a lot. That's something that's it's so much more fun than just buying media or placing media or even optimizing media, getting to build things together.
Yeah, I love the creativity in your approach. It also seems very patient-centric in terms of how you're approaching, and also measurement-centric, which we know is an important one too. Since you started to talk about programmatic media, let's maybe transition into just like media consumption overall.
Sure.
Right? We know today's users and consumers have more touch points than ever before, more information in their fingertips, and they're using different devices and sources to find that information. I'll share a little tidbit since we're here about YouTube. You probably know this, but YouTube is, according to Nielsen, the most watched streaming channel of other streaming services today, which not everybody knows. Surprisingly. And an interesting fact also is, from a device perspective, the TV device has actually just overtaken mobile in terms of views, in terms of time spent actually on the TV device, which is really kind of cool. And that shift is like, we all think that mobile device in our pocket is such a primary viewership, but TV is really a primary viewership. When I think of pharma, I think TV, right? We all have seen probably almost every time we turn on the TV a pharma ad. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how do you see the consumer behavior shifting in the healthcare pharmaceutical space, and like what are you doing to address that with your advertisers?
Yes, and it's shifting like every other space, but at a different cadence and a different pace for a variety of reasons. So you're absolutely right. Like, the pharma brands have been huge TV advertising buyers for decades, and that has been a really strong vehicle, especially when, like we talked about before, in the absence of having huge addressability, targetability. The playbook to launch a new treatment was broad-based TV advertising will cast a wide net, will hit everyone, and in the course of hitting everyone, we'll hit the people that we want to hit. Obvious downsides to that from a marketing perspective, from a consumer behavior perspective. And of course, those things are changing dramatically. You mentioned YouTube usage, and I think brands of all kinds, but particularly in pharma, are really under-indexing on YouTube as a tool. And I think it is in part because it doesn't fit into some of these neat categories that we like to separate our media into, like we're going to buy TV over here, we're going to buy online video over here. Some people might think of it as a content play, as a search engine, which of course it is all of those things at the same time. Our role as an agency, we say this all the time, like we are our client's agent. We have really no dog in the fight. Like we just want to have them place their media where it makes the most sense, where they're going to connect with their audiences. And increasingly, those are obviously digital channels. So we're seeing a lot of movement in those budgets over the last couple of years, and really expecting to see budgets shift more to things like CTV, things like YouTube, other forms of online video in those addressable channels. And what TV is to a consumer doesn't really fit into the categories that we think of it necessarily as marketers and the ways that we've bought it. That just opens up so many amazing opportunities to do things like sequential storytelling, to meet consumers where they are with different formats. Things like in the pharma space, scrolling ISI, important safety information, which you have to have in an ad. And you mentioned watching TV, the kind of long litany of all of the side effects that come during or at the end of an ad can be presented in different ways. So it opens up a lot of opportunities for health and pharma brands that weren't there before. I think it's really exciting. And another reason that has been such a linear TV, we say linear TV.
Yes, as have to differentiate these days.
Another industry term that means nothing to people who actually watch TV, but it tends to be an older audience. If you look at like an eMarketer report of who's watching linear TV and how much time they're spending with linear TV, it's just like this perfect stair step of like, kind of 65 plus, 55 plus, 45 plus, et cetera, all the way down to the younger cohorts who are watching virtually no linear TV at all. And so part of the reason that matters for pharma is a lot of pharmaceutical treatments are targeted towards older audiences. And so that is another thing that has kept that as such a meaningful results driving. It definitely, people have built meaningful businesses in this space, and of course others on linear TV buying and campaigns. But obviously those things are going to continue, those cohorts are going to continue to age out. People are going to want to target the younger cohorts, and we're seeing huge uptake on channels like YouTube, like CTV with our clients as a result.
You mentioned earlier, I actually found something on your website that I want to write or quote here. Butler Till is a results-driven marketing agency for clients who value radical collaboration and purpose-fueled partnerships. I love that as part of like the brand of who you are. You mentioned that a little bit earlier too, and I think sometimes it's not just about having the best media plan or the best measurement plan, but it's about the partnership and really education. So tell me more about how are you educating across the organizations you work with? In my experience, like I find sometimes you have to go beyond just the marketing team, right? Especially with a privacy-centric industry such as pharma, you need to make sure everyone who is worried about privacy and regulation is really on board with the strategy. So tell me more there.
For sure. Such a great point. And we love to have conversations with all levels of an organization that we're working with. We deal with a lot of, so again, talking specifically about the pharma side of things, we deal with a lot of what I would call mid-market enterprise clients. So still large clients with a lot of resources, but not necessarily the largest in their category. We often will refer to that as kind of challenger brands in the pharma space that are maybe trying to launch a new treatment, and there's a very deep-pocketed alternative treatment that's already on the market, already established, etc. And so these campaigns and the investment and resources that they're putting into paid media are critical to the success of this business. So it almost naturally for us goes beyond the marketing team, because the executives in these companies are keenly aware of the investment that's being made. And of course, with a pharmaceutical treatment, there's a patent cliff, there's a period of time. Like it is critical that we get it right in that period of time. And the thing we mentioned before, talked a little bit about privacy and the fact that will just naturally make an advertiser, a brand, a client, an agency more conservative, again, for very good reasons. But I think one of the places where people fall down is that they don't clearly understand what are the trade-offs that you're dealing with on that spectrum of kind of really, really conservative to maybe more aggressive, for lack of a better term. We've had a lot of success with presenting our clients with a clear understanding of what those trade-offs are. So if you want to be, the absolute most conservative you could possibly be, that's fine. But maybe you are going to then, as a result, introduce 80% waste into your campaigns. You're going to hit a whole bunch of audiences that are not relevant. You're going to see a very low return on ad spend when we apply the models to measure this stuff. And then on the other side, it's not that we would be not respecting privacy or running afoul of regulation. It just means we've got to work to create solutions that are going to allow us to do more. That's going to take resources in order to do it. So really just understanding that continuum of where you're comfortable to say, I want and need to make the biggest impact possible in this period of time. And so with the resources I have, what's the best way to do that? And really understanding the trade-off. And I think that's where it gets into much more of a business conversation and an interesting outcomes-focused conversation. So I don't really care at all where our clients place media. We have no interest in it. You mentioned a little bit about who we are as an organization. We're 100% employee-owned through employee stock ownership plan or ESOP. We don't do principal media buying. We don't own any media. We don't really get very much involved in things like the upfronts, although, we participate in those conversations and, try to leverage our buying power on behalf of clients, but we never want to be in a position where we would ever recommend something because we have some kind of interest in it. And we talk all the time at Butler Till about how our client success is our success. Literally, the people working on your business are owners of the company. Every single one. Every employee is an owner. Every owner is an employee. There's no outside investment, and there's no, obviously, ownership of anything like media. So that allows us to really have honest and open, transparent, radically collaborative conversations, as you mentioned, with our clients to say, we want to take your resources and deploy them in such a way that is going to maximize the outcome within this time horizon that we're talking about.
I love it. I could see your passion for the company, for your clients, which is so important. I think about pharmaceutical, they must be spending billions of dollars before it even gets to market.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
For sure.
marketing and getting it right is really table stakes. So it's really important to see that come to fruition, which I work with a lot of lead generation clients and
Sure.
if only it was as easy as clicking purchase on a pair of sneakers,
Yes.
right? You see that
Yep.
instant return, right?
Yep.
It's a lot longer in these cases.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great transition to measurement. I think you were media effectiveness and waste was something you talked a little bit about.
Yeah.
What's the adage? 50 or half of my media spend is useful. I just don't know which half.
Yes.
I think that's one we're all trying to solve for, and I think we've gotten so much better. But the privacy, the regulation, I think still makes that a challenge within healthcare. Tell me how you're approaching measurement with your customers.
In a variety of ways. I think the main thing is there really is no one-size-fits-all approach, not even just for pharma, not even really campaign by campaign. And treating things like they all look and feel the same, I think, is a big mistake that we see people making all the time. And that old adage about half of your advertising being wasted, I think there's really no excuse to be wasting half of your money these days with all of the tools that are available and at our disposal. And so there's all kinds of those in the pharma space that are specific. So third-party measurement, which is anonymized prescription data that we can tie back to, which is great, and clients really connect with that. It provides some incrementality measurement. It provides return on ad spend, which is great. The challenge with it is it tends to be a little bit latent and almost kind of more of a post-campaign or history lesson, here's how things went, and not so much focused on what can we do in the moment or what can we do next that's going to drive outcomes more quickly. And so, one of the things that we've been doing a lot with clients and talking to clients about is a more progressive, sophisticated approach to media mix modeling, very similar to Google's Meridian that you've been talking a lot about lately and innovating on, is helping clients understand much more in the moment, what are the impacts of these different channels? Because the other thing with pharma, and you mentioned lead gen, and we talked a little bit about e-com, is you do not see an ad and make an impulse decision about a medical treatment that you're going to go on. There is a whole series of steps. And so driving awareness is hugely important to these brands. Awareness channels are by definition harder to measure in terms of their business impact because there's a longer pull, it's not as tangible. And so that's where I think something like sophisticated media mix modeling becomes very, very important because we know we have to have those channels. Search is a part of every campaign that we do, lower funnel activity is a part of every campaign that we do. Of course, we partner with Google on those things and they are important, but they have a different character in this category. And they're not, again, someone's not going to click and buy something in the moment. Here, we have to understand that journey in a much more consultative, sophisticated, bespoke, customized way that's going to be different from client to client and really every time that we do it, which again is a lot more fun because we get to help build something with them and show them the results along the way and also help create a much more virtuous cycle and feedback loop with their data than a lot of clients have been able to do before.
Yeah, I love the idea of just like, it's not a one size fits all, right? Because there's so many
100%.
tools.
Yep.
Of course, Meridian, media mix modeling, attribution. There's a lot of measurement fundamentals that you could think about, but they all play different roles in that journey.
Absolutely.
So I love how you're thinking about customization. If you had to give advertisers or brands advice on, how they should be thinking about what's to come, what would be top of mind for you?
First and foremost, and this sounds almost a little cliched, but I guess cliched for a reason, is lean into the change. What's working today is not necessarily going to work in a few years. The things that seem kind of new and maybe even a little risky today are, before you know it, going to be the tried and true tactics of your campaign. So really taking that mindset of continuous change. And not only that, but the pace of that change is only going to continue to accelerate, which can be a little bit scary, but also really exciting to think about what we're going to be able to do in the future that we can't do today. I mean, if you took a look just 20 years ago at the state of media versus where we are today, it would be unrecognizable. And with things like artificial intelligence really coming to the fore in all of these channels, I think it's clear that the next 10 years are going to go even faster. So my number one piece of advice would be don't cling to what's worked in the past necessarily. Be open to things that feel maybe a little scary in the moment. There should always be a significant portion of your resources and your budget that are going only to test things that are going to pay off later on. Things that we're not necessarily really sure about right now. We have good indication that this is important, but it's not one of those tried and true tactics where you can kind of like dollars in, dollars out right away, but always have some, whether it's 10, 15, 20% of those budgets that you're putting towards rigorous testing that's investing in the future of your marketing.
I love that. Change can be hard, but it's really how we find innovation and success. I love that you pulled through a little bit on AI because surprisingly, we didn't talk about AI today. Maybe that will have to be our next chat where we go deeper there because again, I think there's so much change happening when it comes to what AI can do for marketing, for businesses, for brands. So
absolutely. And when I think about it in this context, I mean, we talked about Meridian, we talked about media mix modeling. Obviously, AI is a critical foundational part of all of that. So we don't see AI so much as one thing that we need to focus on, but is really, it's embedded in basically everything that we're working on right now.
I feel like if you're not using it, we'll be behind sooner than we know. But really, Scott, this was so great. Things I took away is, again, don't be afraid to change, test and learn. The importance of privacy-centric solutions that I think are customer-focused is really important. Yes. Thinking about your media and your measurement strategy and how those can evolve over time as consumer behavior evolves over time.
Yep.
And then lastly, the partnerships. How you approach partnerships is, I think, really phenomenal in terms of like a customized approach, but also really like transparent, or sounds like you're educating your customers. And I think that's the key of like the more we all learn and grow as industry changes, regulation changes, AI changes, all things we do, hopefully will help the brands you work with succeed. So thank you so much for your perspectives today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.